Good morning. We are on day 2 of our Pelican sew along, and today we're working on our straps. If you are doing a cotton woven strap, you should have a strap that is cotton woven and interfaced, and it'll be the same length as the straps on page 2 of your chosen pattern. And you're just going to fold that in half, wrong sides together, and press. You're going to open that up. Fold the 2 raw edges in to meet that center crease and press those 2 edges. Then you're going to fold it back in half on that center crease and press those edges. So you'll have a long strap 4 layers thick. And then you're just going to top stitch the folded edge and then top stitch the open edge. And then for your woven straps, you are finished for today. If you are doing the vinyl straps, you're going to take your strap, whether it's for the basic or the fancy. The fancy is going to be longer and thinner. And you're going to find your center point with one of your longest rulers. And you're just going to mark it with something you can see. You can use an ink pen, a Sharpie marker. I'm using this 3-sided chalk. These aren't really dusty. They're sort of waxy. And they write really well on this soft back side of this vinyl. I kind of like it. But you're just going to mark your center line. And you're going to grab your double-sided tape. If you don't have double-sided tape or you don't want to use it, just hold tight for 2 seconds and then you can join back in with us. You're going to run your tape along both sides of your line, and you want to be about a 1/16 to an 1/8 inch away from that line so that you can still see your line in the center. Don't run the tape right up against the line. We need a little bit of space. You're just going to do that on both edges. I'm right-handed and I like to pull with my right, so I'm just turning that over. And popping my second line of tape on. So after you get both of your lines of tape on, you're going to see your center line that you drew. And then the edges of your tape are going to be about an 1/8 to a 1/4 inch away from each other. See how you have that space in there? Smooth those out. Pull the paper off on the one closest to you. And if you're skipping the tape, now is the time that you join back in. You'll still be able to do the same process without the tape. The tape just makes it a little easier. You're going to need clips for this part. If you don't have clips, you can use clothespins, bobby pins, paper clips, binder clips, anything that you can stick on there easily. Pins, you're just not going to be able to use them for this. Pins are going to leave holes. They're not going to heal up like they do in fabric. And you're going to have so many layers here, you're not going to be able to put your pin in anyway. So get something that you can clip with. You're going to start at the end and you're going to fold your raw edge up to meet that tape line. So you want the edge, your raw edge, on the edge of your tape so that you can still see your center line. If you didn't put tape, just go about an 1/8 inch down from that center line just so you can still see it. And then just clip as you go to hold it on. I'm going to start down here at the other end. It's just easier for me to move my hands in that direction. You just go along, fold, stick, clip, fold, stick, clip. You don't have to get these really close to each other. They're just a placeholder for right now to sort of hold your shape for you. Alright, I'm going to turn that around so that my open side and my other side of tape are facing my body. Remove that paper and do the same thing. Except this time when I'm clipping, I want to put my clips so they go between my other side clips. I don't want them to be directly across from each other. So you're going to have space, clip, clip, space, clip, clip. So each clip that you put on is going to go in between the spaces that you left on the other side. I'm also going to put the clips on this side upside down. That's not important, but it just helps me out a little bit. If you are using the double-sided tape, make sure the package says will not gum up your needle. You don't want your needle to be all sticky. Alright, so here's where you should be. You should have a long strap, both sides are folded into the center, and you should have clips on each side. And then your center, you should have a little bit of space, about 1/4 of an inch, so that you can see your line. And then all the tape is back underneath these pieces. There's no tape in the center here. Now what you're going to do is fold that in half. And this is why it's handy to put your clips every other, because now you can just take your clips and pop them onto those two folds. And the reason we left that space in between is when we're folding this up, those edges aren't competing to try to be on top of each other or over to one side or one side, making this edge uneven. So you're still going to have 4 layers folded, and see how it almost folds down perfectly into that bottom fold? It's because we left that space down there. Alright, so your strap is folded, taped, and clipped. So you're going to do that to your second strap. Now before we sew, I want you to grab your white scrap that you cut off the end. If you didn't save this or you didn't have one of these, you can just get about a 1" by 12" piece of vinyl. Make sure it's similar to the weight of the vinyl that you're using for the straps. What I want you to do is just fold that in half, and just rough. This doesn't have to be exact. And just cut it in half. So now you have 2 pieces, and then you're going to go one more time in half. Clip at the fold. So now you have 4 pieces stacked on top of each other. How they're stacked isn't important as long as vinyl is facing out on the bottom and vinyl is facing out on the top. You don't have to put any tape in these, and you don't have to worry about lining the edges up perfectly. Just put a couple of clips on there to hold them. And this is going to serve 2 purposes. It's going to be your practice piece to go through your machine first before you do your straps, to make sure that you have in the correct needle, you have the correct stitch length, you have the correct tension, and then it's going to look good so you don't ruin your straps. Then when it's all sewn together, you have this nice little piece that's the same height as your straps, and it can serve as a hump jumper if you don't have one. This is a hump jumper. It's technically a button jig. It may or may not have come with your machine. It has 2 heights. This side's thinner, this side's thicker, and you hold the button in while your machine stitches it on. And then you also use it when you're coming to, your machine's coming along and you get to this thick seam, and then your foot has to kind of lift and go over and then kind of down and front. And that's where you can have problems with your stitch not being even, and you automatically think, well, it's my machine. My machine can't handle this. And that's not true. What the problem is that when your foot is angled up to go over this hump, your feed dogs are pushing your fabric into the back of that foot, and it can't go anywhere. And you're pushing and tugging and trying to pull. And what you want to do is put this hump jumper, or this piece that you make, this will work just the same. You can even do this out of cardboard. I wouldn't sew it in cardboard, but you could glue up some cardboard if you needed to. And you're going to put this piece under your foot, so now your foot is lifted and it's even. And then you're going to continue to stitch, and that fabric's just going to push that hump jumper out of the way, and then your foot's going to come back down even. And then those stitches that are on top of this piece are going to be the same evenness as before and after it. And then your machine should have no problems. So when you have this little 4 stack pinned up, and then you've got both of your straps clipped up, we're going to go over to the machine and sew them up. I've got my walking foot on. You can have your walking foot or your Teflon foot. I've got a number 90 Microtex needle in right now, and I'm just using a 100% cotton thread. You want to have a top stitch length set. Mine's going to be at 3.5. That's what works for me on vinyl and with this machine. And you're going to use this tester piece to figure that out. Figure out if it's long enough for you, figure out if your needle's right, figure out all the things that you need to figure out on your little tester piece. So you're going to start on one edge or the other and kind of pull these clips back so they're out of the way of your foot. And you're going to top stitch with between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. I find 1/4 inch is a little too deep in, but 1/8 of an inch isn't quite enough. So maybe about 3/8 of an inch. Put your presser foot down if you need to, and give yourself a little back stitch at the beginning and end. See if we can see a little better there for you. So this is where you're going to check. You're going to check that your stitches are long enough that they look pleasing to you. You're going to check your back side and make sure that you can't see your top thread. And then on your top side, make sure you can't see your bottom thread. And then make sure that you don't have big puncture marks from your needle. If you can see large holes, like puncture marks from your needle to where it looks like it's tearing or it's perforated, you might have the wrong size needle for the kind of vinyl that you're using. This one looks good to me. It looks the same on my front as my back. So I'm just going to go ahead and sew my other side. If you did this side and you felt like your foot was kind of sticking and pulling, and you see that your vinyl is sort of pulling down, then run this through the same way. So if you started on this end, just move it over and start on the same end. Then any sticking and pulling will go in the same direction. If you have that pulling and those kind of puckers, if you turned it around and went the opposite way, it's going to try and pull that pucker the other way. You would think that would be helpful, that, okay, well, it'll just straighten it back up. But all it's going to do is give you a pucker or a crease, and you don't want that. So if it feels like your foot pulled, or maybe your foot pressure was too much and it was kind of pulling and grabbing, then run it through the same way. So start both ends the same way. The same with your strap. If you felt like it puckered or pulled at all, just start it on the same end going through. You just have to shift from side to side. If you have a walking foot, you shouldn't have that problem. Now you've got got your both edges stitched up, you're happy with your needle, you're happy with your thread, you're happy with your stitch length, your pressure on your foot, your tension on your thread, then you're ready to sew your straps. If you're still not happy, you can make another test piece, or you can just keep going on this piece and just fill this up with thread if you need to. I'm happy with mine, so I'm going to continue on those straps. And we are going to stitch on the closed edge first, just in case anything wants to smush. You still have an open side for it to smush out and adjust itself. So stitch on your closed end first. Again, a little back stitch, and you might have to pull your clips out of the way of your foot slightly as you go. Alright, again, you want to just check your tension and make sure you're happy with everything. And again, check for your puckers and your pulling. If you puckered and pulled, put the same starting end back in, just move it over. I'm fine with mine, so I'm going to turn it around. I just prefer to stitch with my foot on the right side. Again, give yourself a little back stitch. And do that for your second strap. So you should have 2 straps, top stitched, whether they're woven or vinyl. You just might have longer vinyl ones depending on the version that you're making. And then you should have your little practice piece that you can hang on to if you don't have a hump jumper. You might need that later in the construction. So that's it for your straps. We're not finished with day 2 yet though. We're going to do our closures, but I will run a second video for that, just so this one isn't running so long and you have time to stop and finish your straps. So I'll see you in just a few minutes. If you're making the fancy version, we're going to go ahead and put our strap ends on our straps so that they'll be all ready to go when we get to that step. You're going to need some super glue or some quick dry fabric glue. I like the gel kind. You're going to need a teeny screwdriver, Phillips head, and then you're going to need your strap ends, the screws that came with them, and your 2 straps. So before you put any glue or screws in, you're just going to want to wiggle your straps in and make sure they fit perfectly. You may have to adjust some of the vinyl, and you may even have to trim completely straight if you've got a piece sticking up. That's better. I'm going to slide that in there, make sure it fits, make sure it's centered how you like it, make sure it comes past your screw holes, and it should go down to about this bend. When it starts to come to a point, it's not going to fit anymore. So you're going to pop that back out. You can test all your ends if you need to, but they should all be the same. We're going to just put a couple of drops of glue in here. Not many. I kind of like to go a drop down each side. So the edges will push that down into that point, and then it'll cover the bottom. And then put your strap back in. The glue isn't necessary. I just feel like it makes me feel better. Once you get that in where you want it, you're going to put your 2 screws in there. I also like to gently dip the ends of these screws into a little bit of the glue that is left on the tip. Not much, so that you're not making a mess, but again, it'll just help that screw set. And you're just going to twist those right in. You're just going to keep going until it gives you enough resistance that you can't go any further. Alright, now you've got your end on your strap. You're going to do that to both straps so that you'll have 4 ends covered with caps. We're not going to put the holes in yet. We'll wait until we get to that step so we can line things up properly. But this way your straps will be finished and ready to go.